Hey everyone, welcome back to the Future of Work series. My name is Ellis Talton, Vice President here at Briq. I'm joined by Bassem, Hamdy, our CEO and co-founder.
Hello,
Bassem.
Ellis.
So we've talked about our project initiation as part of the Future of Work, part of the money workflow. The next workflow we're going to talk about, also part of the money workflow, also one that tends to fly under the radar and is maybe not thought of as, it maybe doesn't get a lot of attention as it deserves. And that is the estimate to budget process.
Right. The estimate, final estimate to an actual job cost budget.
Right.
And there's a lot of hair on this because when is an estimate final and when is a budget accurate, right? So this is the one that really gets people really tied up. If you think about it, you have an estimate and that estimate is written in a different language than that of an accounting budget or a project operational budget. Quite frankly, it's different than the schedule as well. So an estimator, I know most people that are watching this know this, an estimator is actually estimating at a level below what we cost in the job cost ledgers and in the operational ledgers in PM. So that means that there's a weird mapping that has to happen. And the other thing that it's a lot of art more than science, because in a lot of cases you might be moving these estimate codes in and out of different budget codes. So like some days site work might be part of the site work code. Other projects have site work as part of general conditions or general requirements.
Right.
So that kind of randomization of the mapping, plus the fact that they're done at different levels, plus there's a minimum of 3 systems involved, right? There's an estimating system, a project management system, and an accounting system. So a minimum of 3. So all of a sudden now you're saying, okay, how do I orchestrate this workflow when there's different languages involved, different types of mapping, and different systems? You think about it, this is a big, gnarly problem for the industry and has been for half a century.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the other things you look at the estimated budget process, what's the cost of doing it incorrectly?
Well, it's everything. I mean, we've had companies that forgot to estimate concrete, right? Like, you don't know what's in any code.
Right.
That's the problem. Like, so if you say I'm doing X for this much money and X is variable, then you'll never know what are you actually doing for the money. And so everybody sits in awe of like, how come fee erodes so quickly on a project? Well, because your original estimate and your original budget didn't agree with each other and the fee was never really established. Even though to their best ability, they're trying to establish it. Nobody's doing this maliciously. But ultimately there's so many, what do they say? Too many forests, not enough trees, or too many trees, not enough forests.
Right.
The idea here is that ultimately we can't figure out what goes into these codes because it's all done offline in Excel. There's a screen in every accounting system and every PM system called import budget. There's that screen.
Right.
It's been there since the beginning of the time. Beginning of time. Import an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV into your accounting system. That's nothing. That's meaningless.
Yeah.
It ultimately is the process of going from estimate to budget.
Right.
That's what needs to be orchestrated.
Yeah. And one of the, earlier video, we talked about, that folks have a lot of knowledge about the business kind of trapped in their head. And this is another great example because you might have a project manager that takes their estimate and builds their budget a little bit differently.
That's right.
Based on, the type of job they're doing, based on their experience, based on the customer.
Versus science, exactly.
It's art versus a science. So in this future of work world, how do you capture the art of creating a budget from an estimate in an automation?
I think you have to give the machine some time. And I know it sounds weird. So there's a term for everybody playing technology bingo at home called machine learning. And machine learning is taught by a human. A machine is being taught by a human. So, we see examples of this in our own, in our own client base. At the beginning, the mapping process is not as articulated as it would be if it was done by a human that knows the art behind it. Now, people will say estimators should do that mapping. It's great. Somebody needs to look at it. Awesome. You can teach a machine over time to look at it and understand what is right and what is wrong. So if we think about it, in order to get this over the hump, in order to make this happen, you need an interface to teach different forms of mapping to the system so that it gets better every time. And we've seen it. A 60% accuracy is not uncommon for the machine to understand how to map these random estimate codes to budget items. But by the end of the first 6 months, you're up to 80%. By the end of the first year, you're at 95%. All of a sudden, you've gone from half-half, essentially, to mostly right. Now, an individual might say, somebody that maybe isn't bought into the church of the future of work, they would go, well, if I have to check it anyways, it's the same amount of work. And that's absolutely not true because of what you said earlier. The variability across people, projects, and processes break the fee model. It just doesn't. If there's variability that I cannot reliably count on your fee because you do something differently, maybe worse than another individual's doing it. So the idea here is you teach it, over time it gets better, but most importantly, you've taken the keys away from some folks to like not screw it up.
Right.
Now, big thing. Construction is an entrepreneurial business. People are going to say, well, I want my project managers to play a little jazz. And, you know, what we like to say is you can't play jazz. You got to play the music as it is on the sheet.
Yes.
Because if you want repeatability, if you want to be more profitable, if you want to run a better business, if you want to run it with less people because you can't hire fast enough, then you're going to have to call it Mozart. You're going to have to call these plays and run these plays appropriately so that you're a more profitable business.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, we have a customer that we automated this workflow for them, and their problem was really just the time it took to go through that translation. There were times where they were 60, 90 days into a job before the project manager had their budgets.
It would drive me nuts. I mean, some of the largest construction companies on the planet couldn't do revenue recognition or WIP in their accounting system because their budget was zero.
Right.
Or they'd have a general conditions budget and nothing else.
Right.
Or they just have the subcontract budgets and nothing else. There are projects that I worked on in my early days of implementation that the budget wasn't anywhere. It was in Excel.
Right.
And this is still, this is 20 years ago, but this is still the case today. The budgets are right for about a hot minute at the beginning of a project, maybe, and then everything else falls apart.
Right. And for them, it was, it wasn't so much that, sure, like you don't want to be flying blind as a project manager, but also, they had to do all these reworks on the back end. Like that just takes up extra time where they could be spending more time, right? Doing new jobs or things like that.
We're going to get into the next integrated workflow for the next video, but ultimately, if you think about it, just like project initiation, you set the seed. Mm-hmm. If the estimate to budget process is delayed, you're under counting revenue, you're under reporting under billing. How do you even know what to bill? What does that screw you on? Let's be honest. It's cash flow.
It's cash.
Yeah. If you don't set this up right the first time, then we got to hit our cash flow.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier. The estimator is going to use an estimating system or Excel. That's what they're going to do. They might use BIM, whatever. That is a tool of the trade. They're going to use a great estimating system, hopefully. Not Excel, which, by the way, is the number one estimating system in the market.
Of course.
But ultimately, they're going to estimate in their art and science.
Yes.
Then it's going to go through a washing machine, and it's going to show up in your PM system and your accounting system, hopefully the same number.
Yeah.
Right? That washing machine, that thing in the middle, that's the brain of the little bot who's learning how to map things better. And it's also learning how to, raise hands on anomalies.
Right.
Because really, the estimator is going to try to do the first version of mapping. We get that. Then the machine validates it, raises a hand where there's a problem. The machine remembers what you told it when you misallocated, and then it goes into accounting and into operations. So what happens, what changes your day? Magically, you have these budgets constantly being brought into the right accounting system, the right PM system, into the right buckets so that you can run your job. There's a concept of job starting. So there's a concept of freezing original budget.
Yes.
And of course, at that point, when you want to freeze that original budget, revisions will stop coming.
Yes.
But just think about the world where, you're estimating in packages in a lot of cases, and those packages are coming in and constantly being revised in the budget screen. You have it in real time.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, the numbers are just more accurate, things are easier to run, and you got a better business. Nobody changes their job at the source. You're still an accountant, you're still in operations, you're still in estimating. But ultimately, that orchestration of revisioning, updating, mapping, and ultimately starting the job so you have original budget is all done by a machine.
Wow. Let's have a look at what that might look like. We have a quick demo prepared for us. Let's have a look real quick.
Hey folks, so today we're looking at the estimate to budget process, utilizing a Briq workbook to ultimately fill out that information, similar to how you would today in Excel, and then ultimately storing this data in the Briq database and setting up a bot up to then run and take that data and create the budget in Procore. What would normally be a manual process today, either line by line, or utilizing the Procore import feature. So what I've done here is I've essentially filled out some of the general conditions on this project, just for this example. I've put in some quantities for the amount of hours and time that these project managers and superintendents are going to be actually active on the project. This is for project 1427. So what I want to do here is actually commit this information to the database. We see that the data has been stored successfully. Then what I want to do is come over to the automation screen here. We see this sheet to Procore budget. What I want to do is actually manually run this, essentially trigger that bot to tell it to, hey, go grab that information and go create that budget for me in Procore at that project. Awesome. So now let's check out how that bot actually worked. What we have in Briq here is actually what we call our audit trail. So every time these bots are running, right, every time these automations are doing something, you're getting detailed descriptions of what actually happened in the audit trail, as well as a screen recording. So I can come in and click view activity here. And what it's going to provide me is some screenshots, as well as an actual screen recording of the bot, logging into Procore and actually creating that, that budget, right? I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here. So this is the bot in action, right? This is all tracked in our audit trail. So it's selecting that project that we committed the budget to. It's going to go on your financial management tool here, select budget. This one already has some existing bill codes here, but what it's going to do is essentially upload that Procore budget for you automatically, asking you to confirm that you want to overwrite the existing data there. But this process is done completely automatically through one of Briq's automations. So here we see those bill codes now successfully populated within the Procore budget that came directly from a Briq workbook.
Yeah, and just as you were talking us through, right? Just as the brain is in that middle that does the art piece, does that translation for you. And one of our customers says, you know, with this process, you know, they've cut down to about half a day. On being on a job without the budget being set up. And the estimator enjoys their Fridays a lot more as well.
And nobody has to do the evening job of double data entry.
Right.
Teach a machine to do the work you don't have to do anymore. And all of a sudden your life is a lot more human. That's the future of work. That's what we're talking about. It's not let's replace jobs with machines. It's let's augment people's lives so they're not doing the heavy lifting, the crappy work, the double data entry, or trying to like remember how to do a process that's totally randomized. You get a person on a bad Monday, forgets how to do this process, your fee is gone.
100%. Absolutely. That's what's the budget. Super critical part of the money workflow.
Sure.
Stay tuned for the next video.